With the advent of online gaming, dating back to the 1980s and 90s by various means, most notably PC gaming, video game and tech publishers were clamoring to get their fingers in the online gaming pot as fast as humanly possible. A mountain of innovation was just waiting for some lucky company to strike gold and create the next mega trend in gaming. As history would prove, Microsoft were the ones to acquire that gold with Xbox Live. Halo 2 and a plethora of other online titles would take the world by storm, leading others like PlayStation to try their hand at a similar pursuit. Aside from a few games like SOCOM Navy SEALs and Final Fantasy XI, Sony's PS2 online infrastructure wasn't as user-friendly or unified as Microsoft's. Sony had left online access largely in the hands of each individual publisher to tinker with for their games. This curse would end up becoming a blessing for today's topic, as you'll come to see. At its inception, if you wanted to play PS2 games online, you'd have to jump through your own hoops. In some cases, those hoops would cost money. Taking note of the online revolution playing out before them, Capcom would begin brainstorming their very own entry into the online world. What better introduction than to take Resident Evil online? In 2001, Capcom greenlit Network Biohazard, their very first attempt at bringing the series online. What's funny about all of this is that it almost couldn't happen. Around the early 2000s, Resident Evil went Nintendo exclusive for a few years, if you'll remember. Capcom, almost immediately regretting this decision, felt that the brand needed to stay on PlayStation as its very presence began and did its best on said platform. The deal that Capcom made with Nintendo was the exclusive rights to the main series Resident Evil games, not spin-offs. So Network managed to skate by this contractual obligation unscathed. Capcom would maintain RE's access to its original core fanbase in some way after all. Series director and producer Mikami Shinji almost got to make this game, but had his hands full with the ups and downs of RE4's development. Instead, Funamizu Noritaka would head this game's development. Funamizu was responsible for producing games like RE2, 3, and Code Veronica, so we had a wealth of knowledge on this series going into this project. Since this was one of the only PS2 games Capcom would put out at this time, the budget given to Network would rival that of the main series, making for a truly awesome and fleshed out game, but also a risky endeavor. This was Capcom's first AAA online title. A lot was riding on this game, and as you'd imagine, actually making it was tough. As you'll see later on, Capcom wasn't just making a stripped-back multiplayer Resident Evil game, they were taking Resident Evil online. That meant taking the series' formula and translating its raw single-player thrills into a realm occupied by 4 online players. All of this was challenging, but ultimately achievable given the larger budget and time the team got to fully flesh out the title's various characters and scenarios. At E3 2002, the world would finally see Network Biohazard, now redubbed Resident Evil Outbreak. During its development, the dream of keeping Outbreak online only had been shattered. After extensive research into internet capabilities across the globe, Capcom would confirm the game's offline mode. Since Outbreak wasn't operating through something like a PlayStation network, that meant online functionality was region-based. So American and Japanese players had their own companies to sign up through to even play the game with other people. Most shockingly, PAL regions couldn't play the game online at all, due to the sheer amount of languages and different internet infrastructures across all of Europe. At the end of the day, Outbreak needed to have a single-player mode. Outbreak was off to a rough start, but despite its issues, the title sold well enough to earn it an additional content-rich expansion called Outbreak File 2. For those of you not in the know, Outbreak was actually a two-parter that I will respectively be calling Outbreak and File 2. Together, both games make up Outbreak's entire experience. The first 5 scenarios in Part 1 are less challenging than the second 5 present in File 2, for example. This making things a little harder to explain when recommending to people looking to start their Outbreak journey, but I'll do my best. With all of that said, it's time we dig into the online phenomena that was too ahead of its time. Let's talk about
Resident Evil Outbreak.
The Resident Evil Outbreak titles are classic RE games. The difference here is that Outbreak is one of the most advanced survival horror games of all time. Beginning your Raccoon City adventures, you get to choose one of 8 playable characters, all equipped with their very own gimmicks, gear, strengths, and weaknesses. Couple that with classic Resident Evil gameplay staples like open level design, resource management, and of course, beautiful fixed camera angles, and you've got yourself one of the most engaging and replayable games in Capcom's catalog. I think Outbreak is the first ever documented case of this, but it actually puts tank control exclusively on the D-pad, while the left stick allows for traditional analog movement. This is one of those rare cases where I won't be defending tank controls, because the analog movement is a lot better for Outbreak's faster multiplayer design. A bunch of Capcom games have gone on to use this dual control scheme layout, but as far as I know, Outbreak did it first. One thing that File 2 specifically introduced is something I remember non-Resident Evil fans would always complain about not having back in the day, and that, my friends, is legit moving while shooting. File 2 lets you hold down L1 to lock on and strafe around targets. As you'd expect, it feels amazing doing this in a classic RE title. It kinda makes you wonder why, after like RE2, Capcom wouldn't just apply this kind of design to the rest of the series. Dino Crisis always had this going on, so it's not like the company didn't have experience implementing moving and attacking. It makes me dream of having an RE3 where I can move, shoot, and dodge at will. Oh, wait. Nonetheless, it is incredible to play in this way, and is a standout as to why Outbreak is so iconic in its own right. This game being more of a classic affair, and by default multiplayer first, the challenge is cranked up considerably, compared to previous RE games. Especially when you play single player, Outbreak's 10 Raccoon City adventures require a certain level of character mastery and scenario knowledge to truly succeed. Whether you have real-life friends supporting you or not, each scenario will test your mettle. To go over everything that makes each character special would take all day, so instead I'm going to tell you about my 3 favorite survivors and touch upon the rest as we go. The opening chapter of Outbreak, appropriately titled Outbreak, reintroduces us to the world of Resident Evil and Raccoon City with a breathtaking montage of RE2's original viral containment breach. Hunk's team is massacred by a mutated William Birkin. We get to see the sewer rats feasting on an infected corpse, visually symbolizing the spread of DNA there and the spread of the infection throughout the city. And all of this is scored to a piece of music so stunning that I wish it was actually the theme song to the entire RE franchise. After this incredible intro, the title introduces us to our 8 playable heroes. Kevin Ryman, the RPD slacker, finds himself drinking his sorrows away in uniform at Jay's bar. It's no wonder he failed his STARS entry exam twice. The sassy lady in red, Alyssa Ashcroft, whose name might ring a few bells considering recent events, is a reporter for Comet News. Being a hardened go-getter, working overtime isn't something uncommon for this abrasive journalist. Those mysterious murders in the Arklay Mountains won't solve themselves, wink wink. The inquisitive Yoko Suzuki seemingly changes her entire appearance upon entering this bustling establishment. Her initial appearance, a curious, exhausted corporate suit, shifts into the casual 90s girl we play as, might suggest an air of mystery or maybe an unraveling to respite at the end of a long work week. As the night winds to a close, a mysterious customer arrives at the lively bar.
Huh? What a weird customer. What are you doing?
Yes, this game totally uses edited real-life full-motion video for a handful of cutscenes, and you thought RE1 had the only live-action cutscenes. As the bar descends into hell, our heroes answer their final call. Kevin, being a burlier guy, can stand his ground with little effort, using his strength to fight or create barriers to delay the impending invasion. Alyssa, snapping into action, can pick the lock to a door leading deeper into the building, bypassing any special keys. Yoko, starting off in and fleeing from the woman's restroom, can use her extra carrying space to scoop up every useful item in the bar. This first scenario is like a perfect introductory vertical slice of everything you do in the following chapters. We've got varied survival horror combat, tons of exploration with bonus items to find, some light puzzle solving and key collecting, all accompanied by multiple action-packed set pieces. You're literally jumping across rooftops before holding back the horde and detonating a bomb, blowing up a city street containing what can only be described as a zombie lake. It's sick, it's replayable, and it's even got an alternate ending. Sorry, RPD crew, I'll let you guys deal with that flowing sea of undead. Whoever you're playing as gets their very own intro and outro for this scenario, and literally all the rest. If the normal events of each scenario didn't excite you enough, you can do a full playthrough as your favorite character, watch them survive and grow through the entire Raccoon City incident. It's actually incredibly cool. With that said, unlike previous RE titles, you're not carrying over your inventory between the scenarios. Because this is an online game, things have to refresh on every playthrough. So the way equipment works is a little different. All weapons are limited use. Guns have ammo, obviously, but the plethora of melee options break after a while. There are tons of sticks and sharp objects to wreak havoc with. After extended wear and tear, some of these things will even bend or snap in certain ways, transforming them into useful throwing objects. The melee weapon system, in retrospect, brings to mind Dead Rising's design. In fact, back when that game had come out, I thought to myself, wow, this is like a much better implementation of Outbreak's weapon system. Of course, comparing these two things is silly, but what else did we have back then? Like Frank West, when unarmed, every survivor has the ability to tackle, and depending on who you're playing as, this goes from a basic shoulder check to a full-on body slam. Mark, being a retired veteran turned security guard, will absolutely destroy zombies physically. David, the brooding plumber, can even build his own devastating melee weapons that in some cases make short work of entire boss fights. Some of the weaker characters like Jim, Cindy, or Yoko have less impactful moves, but each of these three have their own dodges that make up for it. Cindy has an incredibly useful emergency squat that has a ton of iframes and keeps her in place so you can stop, pop, and keep moving. Yoko has probably the cutest emergency crawl. You can tap this for a quick drop and stand that acts like an evasive quick turn, or you can hold the button and watch her dart across the floor like a scaredy cat. And Jim, well, he throws himself on the ground. Yeah, Jim is, quite the coward.
My life is shit!
The amount of depth poured into every character's skill set is remarkable. As a hardcore RE fan, it was awesome seeing all of what made up the original cast of main characters mechanically better represented in this next-gen PS2 game. We get everything from Resident Evil's basic movement, shooting, and its plethora of fun weapons. Jill's dodge and shoulder check become normal things the characters can do. And RE3's ammo crafting now translates into David's combo weapons, this possibly being another inspiration for Dead Rising 2. You know how the modern RE games have those nifty focused shots? That actually originates from Outbreak. Kevin and Alyssa can pot shot by focusing on enemies with handguns. It's literally the same mechanic brought over from the classic RE design playbook. It's genuinely amazing seeing the formula get this level of innovation, but it doesn't stop at just baseline mechanical adaptation. As you'll see, the modern Resident Evils pay a surprising amount of respect to Outbreak, but we'll talk about that as we go. One of the most memorable visuals of classic Resident Evil games are, of course, their eerie, disembodied void doors that load each of the game's rooms. In Outbreak, doors don't just load your game. They can be lockpicked, bashed open, shot open, held closed, and pulled closed. Yeah, stick with me for a second. Since Resident Evil Outbreak is an online game, its zones all exist at one time on a connected map. Heading through these voids of data obviously preserves what's on both sides of said threshold, so that means players and monsters alike can traverse these zones freely. This makes for some awesome horror movie moments where one player can hold a door closed with a zombie banging away on the other side, while another solves a puzzle or scavenges the room for items. Again, the beefier characters can hold doors for longer, giving giving each survivor a more defined role for each specific co-op situation. This is the kind of stuff you'd expect to see in a multiplayer Resident Evil title. When you actually play with a full party of people, Outbreak feels like a survival horror dream come true. And speaking of that in particular, when your character hits low HP or enters danger state, they will most likely drop to the ground. You can crawl to a healing item, saving yourself in the process, or have a party member help you back up to your feet. In this state, you can help an injured player get to safety by shouldering them. It feels super grounded surviving a difficult encounter and then literally dragging your teammates out of hell. Because each of the characters, sans Yoko, has an inventory of 4 spaces, items more often than not have to be shared between the group. Survivors can swap and trade items, which again adds to that grounded feeling of real survival. Like RE0, you can also swap items with another, leaving previously held trinkets on the ground. For as cool as this idea can and will be, keeping track of and trading items in single player can be a hassle. It's funny because the devs clearly knew this would be a problem, so a lot of the time in the larger scenarios, you'll be coming across AI survivors that already have certain key items. This kind of thing is great for quality of life, but it doesn't remedy survivors grabbing up all the ammo and heals for themselves. You can obviously ask for items by clicking on their inventories, but sometimes this can also be a challenge since Outbreak File 2, specifically, allows you to choose your entire single-player party. The game doesn't tell you that, canonically, some of the survivors hate each other and will refuse your trade requests, which on one hand is hilarious and even feels very realistic, but on the other, this might be way too much to expect from a single-player gamer just looking to have a nice time after spending $50 in the year 2004. Just give me the herb, Jim.
Kiss my ass, bitch!
Nowadays, you can easily look up which characters to best pick for a party, but I remember back in the day thinking File 2 was insanely difficult for no reason. Let's just say I chose the perfect parties for each of my single-player scenarios this time, and pretty much had a blast with all of them. As a multiplayer game, communication is key, especially in such dire survival situations. Well, Outbreak has perhaps some of the worst in-game comms I've ever experienced. Back in the day, both Outbreak parts shipped without voice chat. Yeah, in a game where death-defying decision-making is key to overcoming impossible obstacles, you absolutely could not verbally speak to your teammates. What was Capcom's genius alternative to open comms? Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the ad-lib system.
You have the IQ of a brick.
What the fuck you doing?
Dumbass!
There are 2 kinds of ad-libs, those being direct commands like go, help, and wait, and these are mapped to the right stick. Pressing square is like activating a sometimes inner thought button, but you'll always hear an out loud piece of dialogue where the characters say something specific depending on their surroundings. The actual audible dialogue is almost always completely out of pocket.
I must be on crack.
Outbreak notoriously has its AI partners rambling non-stop. It's confusing, it's disorientating, and it'll get on your nerves more often than not when playing in single player. For a solo survival horror experience, this constant jibber-jabber ruins the vibe. When I was young, I remember showing Outbreak to my normie cousin, and his knee-jerk reaction to like the first 5 minutes of the game was him bursting out in laughter at all of the insane crap coming out of the characters' mouths.
What you talking about, Willis?
No matter how funny the ad-libs tend to be, they'd always take me out of the horror situation I was supposed to be immersed in. You can be simply walking down a hallway, and it'll sound like Mark is having an existential panic attack in the other room. If you go check on him, he'll just be standing there losing his mind.
Ooh. Listen to me. I'm old, you know.
What are you talking about? I'm fine.
God is punishing us.
Oh God, what should I do?
Ooh. Heaven can wait.
Mark? Are you feeling okay?
Help me,
Jeez.
please!
In File 2, the verbal part of the ad-lib is removed, save for the commands that actually make sense. This helps get you into the scene more and obviously makes the game way less silly to watch. This is already a vast improvement, but File 2 does something really cool, where in a select few situations you can actually speak to the NPC characters. This reveals more info about the level you're playing, depending on who you're controlling. In some puzzles, if you're playing with other people, you can even ad-lib puzzle solutions, giving your teammates' characters the answers to certain riddles, which is pretty high-tech game design. It also helped remedy the lack of voice chat back in the day. The ad-lib system is a novel concept, but it's also completely busted. With a bit more polish, this system could have worked perfectly, but also, you know, just having basic voice chat would have made the entire system irrelevant and also improved the online play immensely. Your mileage may vary on this next thing I'm about to complain about, but humor me for a bit as I rant. The most controversial online feature that unfortunately bleeds into offline play is the game's virus gauge. With this being an online-focused experience, players who idle during online sessions, wasting precious server time, have a unique surprise coming to them. Zombification. By default, every single character is infected with the T-virus. At the beginning of every game, your infection counter starts ticking up from 0. The infection keeps building no matter what you do, and taking damage adds a few points to its overall percentage. Each character is affected differently, so it'll grow faster or slower depending on who you're playing as. What genuinely sucks about this feature, if you want to call it that, is its presence in single player. Wanting to do things that you'd normally be able to do in past RE titles, like carefully investigating your surroundings, actually reading the files, having a general appreciation for the game's level design. Don't even think about wasting your time. The virus is flowing through your veins, and all you've got to suppress it are limited use antiviral pills. The virus gauge forces you to play fast and loose on a first attempt. It honestly strips you of fully taking in that classic Resident Evil sense of discovery. Replaying each chapter is how I've come to appreciate each of the scenarios. For all of its breathtaking gameplay innovation, not being able to reliably sit back and enjoy reading a file with the virus gauge breathing down your neck always broke my heart. It's the kind of thing that has me dreaming of the day I get to play a true single-player designed offline Outbreak. By far the worst thing about this stupid virus is that playing offline doesn't even get you the zombie transformation. When you die, you die. Zombification is locked to online play, and I kinda get it, since the only thing you'd be able to do offline is terrorize your AI partners. Let me tell you, terrorizing your real-life human friends is an experience I'm glad I got. Outbreak's real-time file reading, inventory screen, and virus gauge almost suck all of the fun out of the game for me. Thankfully, this is Resident Evil we're talking about, where each scenario will run you about 30 minutes to an hour tops, so doing replays isn't total torture. Having replayed each chapter multiple times through the years, gaining a greater knowledge of how everything plays out has helped me actually enjoy what mysteries I was able to uncover on my various Outbreak adventures. As a single-player game, it's got a lot of issues, but at its core, Outbreak really is a great game once you learn how to play it. When I first got into it back in the day, I remember being put off by its difficulty, not fully grasping its multiplayer core design. I'm sure you've probably noticed, but a lot of the footage in this video may seem a little uneventful. That's because when I was recording my footage, I played the game's scenarios on easy. That option when playing offline feels more like normal mode. If you manage to pick the game up after watching this, there's a strong possibility that you might think it sucks. I'm putting that out there as a fair warning due to the constant difficulty spikes and trial and error required to really develop an understanding of this title's thrills. As a hardcore fan of the series that just wanted to see more of Raccoon City, it was worth it for me to get used to the game's quirks and minutiae. I only stress this point because you may struggle a lot. Needless to say, should you choose to fight through the hordes of monsters flinging themselves your way, you will be rewarded with a lot of Raccoon City world building. So, with that in mind, I think it's time we take a closer look at those memorable moments. Virus gauge be damned, we're going back to that iconic City of the Dead, one way or another. Outbreak's main attraction is giving players the ability to revisit and explore so much of Raccoon City, making whatever issues this game might have more than worthy of a tour through its undead streets. After the first chapter's vertical slice of blood-pumping action, Outbreak slows down as we get to explore William Birkin's lab in Below Freezing Point. This time, the lab has been reimagined in much greater detail, giving us a more comprehensive look into how this place once operated before Raccoon City's fall. As we make our way up the iconic horizontal elevator shaft from the end of RE2, we find ourselves back in this accursed place, now looking and feeling a lot colder. What seems like an ominous redesign storyline turns out to be tied to a greater mystery. Birkin's lab is frozen over, and the higher we go, the more frigid this place gets. With a rogue Umbrella employee seemingly sabotaging her once fruitful but hellish workplace, the G-Virus has been stolen, this time by the disgruntled Monica.
What is that capsule?
Wait! Are you after this too? You are, aren't you? Oh, you are so...
Stop it. I don't understand what you're talking about.
Don't play the innocent little girl with me. You can't fool me. You could never fool me. Yoko, you little lifesaver. I'm so glad we had this chance to catch up.
God, she sucks. As we ascend, we actually take down a portion of the giant plant from the original lab. Never leave home without a bit of V-jolt. This massive tunnel-like room now equipped with multiple walkways, allowing access to each of the lab's previously inaccessible floors. This is a great fix to an oversight of the original RE2 lab, where we had to imagine a bunch of out-of-shape scientists using this insanely long ladder. Like, you expect Stevenson from Central Executive to climb this thing? Then you are not getting that raise, good sir. If you play this scenario as Yoko, you'll learn more about her past as an Umbrella researcher. Miss Suzuki actually worked in this lab. Her record still on file makes exploring this place easier. You can even find Umbrella survivors that'll give her powerful weapons. On the top floors near the iconic connecting bridge, we find Hunter R's frozen solid. If you're unaware, these guys are rare Hunter variants that had their introduction in this very lab, exclusively on the N64. Outbreak is such an all-encompassing game that it's even referencing a port of RE2 and not just the initial release of the game. It would make sense since RE2 N64 is like the true canon version of that game, but we might talk about that in a future episode. Finding the temperature control room and thawing this place out, Monica is jumped by a G embryo that uses her body to incubate itself. Gross. Activating the all-too-familiar turntable platform, we escape to the surface, but not before taking on a full G adult. Gang up on this xenomorph wannabe or smash the train into it to save the day.
And they think that Wesker's filet mignon ass is sitting in that chair.
Yeah, his filet mignon.
They scooped him up from the freaking volcano, and he's been slowly regenerating.
Below freezing point is actually my favorite scenario of the two games. Getting to see an iconic location fully remade in PS2 visuals back in the day was a treat. Experiencing more of the real-world workplace drama with Monica and Yoko's one-sided feud is the kind of world building that makes Outbreak's place in the series a precious one. It's a perfect standalone episode in the overall canon of Resident Evil, and a wonderful trip down memory lane. Smoothly transitioning from one familiar locale to another, the next Outbreak chapter is The Hive. A night of slithering terrors takes us back to the Raccoon City Hospital, as previously seen in 1999's RE3 Nemesis. Out of the gate, we're introduced to Dr. Hirsch, a nervous and faintly suspicious professional who happens to work in this building. Spending a mere 5 minutes exploring, we're also introduced to this level's pursuer, the Leech Man, an unshakable legion of leeches. Running from this thing inadvertently leads it to the good doctor as he's knocked over, swallowed up by the creature. Hirsch, now fully assimilated into this massive madness, stalks us through these lonely halls. The original rooms found in RE3 look incredible as you'd imagine, but once again, like the previous scenario, we get to see so much more of the hospital. Almost every single floor of it, including its multiple basements and roof, are filled with frights and excites. In a lower level basement, a high temperature controlled room keeps chemicals conditioned. Knowing what we know about Resident Evil and its highly flammable, squirming threats, luring the leech into this room would spell its doom. Finding a surplus of packaged plasma, we can use the blood of the city's very citizens to distract and call upon the ever-present bloodsucker. Carefully guiding Dr. Hirsch to his new grave, we barbecue him. Grabbing his key and finding a boat won't be enough to get us out of this moat. The Hive has just invited us to its grand ball and wants another host. Letting teammates perish will have the bugs begin a new reign of persistent terror. Yes, this extremely difficult monster can be copied. 1 leechman is tough enough, but 2 will make you gloom. Add in 3 and your death will come for free. If Birkin's lab was freezing, this hive of hell slowly raises the temperature. Make no mistake, this hospital isn't as hot as it gets, but this place sure is doing enough to make us sweat. Stocking up on guns and specially crafted pointy sticks, we make our way to the hospital's pit. Down in the sewer channel is where we set our next scene. Blocking our path is the mother of all grubs, the Leech Queen. Not to be confused with this dude. Playing as Dave, we get to stab away at this thing, surprisingly making short work of it. A lonely trudge through the sludge, and we're on to bigger, brighter things. Hopefully things not as clingy as this well springs. Towards the end of the first scenario, we actually pass by a hotel, the Apple Inn. That's where Chapter 3, Hellfire, takes place. An all-new location never before seen in RE. After the hotel's boiler explodes, most of the building is engulfed in flames. Our group escapes into this place thinking it's safe, only to find a complex series of burning halls and rooms adorned with a healthy amount of Resident Evil-style puzzling. Clicking on a collection of paintings in a correct order, finding special jewels, inserting them into statues, and creeping around creatures is the kind of stuff required in getting down to the hotel's lobby. The atmosphere in this chapter is on a whole other level. As an experienced gamer, you know this place won't ever crumble, but the visuals and superb sound design make you feel like one wrong step can send your character straight through the floor. The Art Deco design of everything makes this place feel Spencer Mansion-like in the visual department, but it ends up being a little more RE2 in its tighter level design. The one downside to Hellfire, I feel, is that it can be especially hard to get your bearings in this place. It's not that any one hallway looks or feels the same, it's that you don't really know which doors will lead to flaming dead ends or folding loops back to the other areas. Like with the other chapters, it takes some getting used to and might require a replay or 2 more than the others, but once you've got this place memorized, it becomes a genuinely fun puzzle box to play through. Hellfire also finishes very strongly, with a boss fight out of my nightmares. The Suspended is like a supercharged liquor. She's gigantic and blocking the only way out. Her tongue is razor sharp and can whip across the room at light speed, making for a few situations where you have to duck and take cover. After all's said and done, this place is extinguished as we move on to our last chapter of Outbreak Part 1. Hellfire's multi-layered level design was just a taste of the true classic RE formula that Outbreak's final chapter, Desicions Desicsions, proudly brings to the table. The first thing we see out of this story is a mysterious scientist losing it over Umbrella wanting to mass-produce his latest masterpiece.
What should be important becomes overshadowed by greed. Mass production? Ridiculous!
Inside a giant pod, we see what looks like a classic tyrant, but this one looks a little more human. Switching over to the RPD's underground parking lot, the team find a letter addressed to the group's doctor, George. This memo, from one of the doctor's university friends, urges the medical practitioner to head to the town's university, where he'll find answers to the city's downfall. The group set out to explore another gothic, mystery-filled Raccoon City building. Playing this game as a kid and seeing that very recognizable parking lot remade in stunning PS2 detail had me over the moon. I really thought a full RPD expedition was about to commence, but sadly it doesn't. I'd have to wait a full year for that special privilege. Taking place in the labyrinthine Raccoon University, Desicions Desicsions is the most Resident Evil piece of content in this first part of Outbreak. This scenario is like a mini Resident Evil game with how deep its level design goes. There's plenty to see and explore in the actual topside university, but delving into its underground lab unearths giant testing grounds, an old train tunnel lost to time, a large backlot, and a helipad that looks rather accessible. There's even a giant mutant beehive and a pool filled with Hunter Gamma down here. It's like everything you've played up to this point was the training wheels for this one scenario. A lot happens in this chapter, but what towers above the rest is its narrative. The sender of that RPD letter, one Peter Jenkins, is found dead, shot in the back of the head. On his desk lies open documentation detailing the research and creation of a vaccine called Daylight, the ultimate nullifier, the cure for the T-virus. On his body, we find a journal. In it, Peter lays out the steps one would have to take to create this miracle vaccine. Of course, this being Raccoon City, the university also doubles as a front to the machinations of Umbrella's biological terror. Exploring the university's rooms, we find all kinds of hidden paperwork from Peter. He warns George, or whoever happens to find his writing, that a man he worked with named Greg Mueller's up to no good. Greg is the scientist we saw earlier, and is upset with how Umbrella's been running their operation, believing that the mass production of bioweapons pales in comparison to a perfect singular creation. Peter, catching on to Umbrella being responsible for the outbreak, and Greg's goal of using the daylight vaccine merely as a tool to leverage power over said corporation, gives him the change of heart he needs in wanting to expose everything and everyone guilty of Raccoon's destruction. That change of heart came a little too late, as Greg himself silenced Peter for good. Well, we're here now, and what we aim to do is blow this conspiracy wide open. Exploring the building and underground labs leads us to each piece of the daylight vaccine. One of those pieces happens to be the blood of Greg's beloved new tyrant model, the Thanatos. Yes, this giant naked dude chases you around the facility and is virtually unkillable. Gunfire barely leaves a scratch on this thing, leading us to blast it with some exposed electrical wiring. Once you've got all 3 pieces of this puzzle, you can make the daylight cure, which, yes, actually removes the virus gauge. I have never experienced such satisfaction canonically deleting an annoying video game mechanic as getting rid of this shit arbitrary timer that adds nothing to this game's single-player mode. I mean, the feeling they want you to feel is valid and powerful. This moment is iconic, but it's not going to erase the painful memories of this timer killing me unfairly on the harder difficulties. Well, at least Peter's tagline for it is pretty great. You don't need an umbrella in the daylight. Pretty sick, I will admit. After stewing up a few vials of daylight, we find Greg in the neighboring room. Having survived the assault against his ultimate weapon, he remorsefully addresses Umbrella's disastrous treatment of the T-virus project. In a moment of clarity, he also reflects on the company destroying the city, not before returning to his mad ramblings. If Yoko is in the party, he finally reveals her involvement in the T-virus experiments, having her memory wiped by this very scientist just 2 years prior. Before Greg's able to reveal more dark secrets, a familiar face swoops in to silence the mad scientist.
Farewell.
RE3's very own Nikolai executes his target flawlessly, keeping Umbrella's secrets safe for another day. With Greg dead, everyone inoculated, and the discovery of bombs planted in the university, we make our way out of the building. As the building collapses, one of RC's fire officials sees the commotion and flies down to pick up the group. Of course, this wouldn't be Resident Evil if the Thanatos didn't show up to halt our escape. As always, it's extremely fun seeing a group of everyday survivors wailing away on a giant nightmare creature. Defeating the monster, we make it to the chopper, but it's still not done. If you happen to have an extra vial of daylight in your pocket, you can actually pair it with a medical capsule shooter, one-shotting this monster, curing it once and for all. Like each of the chapters, this final scenario has its own character-specific endings, but what's actually insane is it's got good and bad endings for each, depending on if you made enough vaccines before leaving. If that wasn't crazy enough, there are also secret pair endings that see survivors who happen to be best friends sticking it out as the bombs hit Raccoon City. George and Cindy all but confess their feelings for each other. Alyssa and Yoko use a laptop to send out evidence about the city's destruction before smashing said computer. And the most metal of them all, David and Mark fix a broken down Umbrella tank and go out swinging. What a game. But that's not where our Outbreak adventures end. In File 2, we get 5 additional scenarios that show us even more of the city. In Wild Things, we get to fully explore the Raccoon City Zoo, and this particular level was highlighted greatly in the game's marketing for one big reason. Yeah, File 2 has a literal zombie elephant in the room that we have to talk about. Like, you thought Nemesis was scary? Try outrunning Oscar. Have fun maneuvering around a building-sized animal that's lost all of its mental faculties. This big bastard stomps around the park, climbing over and into each of the sections just to hunt you down. Hiding inside isn't a safety guarantee either, as Oscar will just smash his big head into wherever you're hiding. In his previous life, Oscar was the star attraction of the park, putting on his little talent show for the happy humans of this once living city. Now, in his undead state, Oscar's broken free from captivity. Well, commitments die hard, seeing as this massive behemoth will still respond to the music that plays through his pen's loudspeaker. Trapping Oscar in his show pen sees the Goliath continue his mindless assault, slamming into the heavy gates until they fall. While it is a gargantuan effort taking this guy down, I always feel bad for just trapping this poor animal who's likely only known captivity his entire life. Leaving him to repeat his horror even after death is cruel. Killing the elephant is freeing him from his horror. But that also triggers a potentially deadlier threat, being a zombie lion. This guy blocks your escape, but proper planning sees this monster's end a lot quicker than Oscar's. Rest in peace, big man. You entertained the citizens of RC to the day you died. Twice. I'd like to make a special mention of the elephant restaurant you get to explore at the very start of this level being on a sign in RE3 Remake. This is where that comes from, if you didn't know. In Underbelly, we get to explore Raccoon City's subway system. Aside from looking almost exactly like Silent Hill 3's subway level, not much happens down here. The spectacle of exploring RC's dark underground is cool, but there's basically no narrative. For me, the most notable brain blast was playing this game at 2 o'clock in the morning, walking around the concourse area and catching a glimpse of one of the signs. Rhodes Hill? I must have been seeing things, I thought to myself. Rhodes Hill is in the RE9 trailer. If you haven't watched my trailer analysis, I spotted a sign in one of the screenshots with this location's namesake printed all over it. I assumed this was a place outside of RC. It turns out Rhodes Hill was staring us in the face for about 20 years. The new Resident Evil devs are definitely classic fans. They certainly seem to love Outbreak with all of these references. With that said, a few years ago I had a similar case of whiplash playing RE3 Remake and getting to the Kite Bros railway office. The entire building is an Outbreak reference. In Underbelly, you get to explore their back offices, and if you play as Jim, you're actually at his workplace. In the 3 Remake version, some fans even speculate that the memo you find in the break room is from Jim, given how it's written. If you don't remember, Jill has to solve a quick puzzle to restart the train station's power, which is similar to what you do here in Outbreak. This was the first Outbreak reference that really jumped out at me in RE3R, and I thought it was super cool. Little did I know how many were actually sitting in plain sight. Well, after solving a ton of plumbing-related puzzles, the buggies come out to play. A bunch of massive ticks show up, becoming the persistent threat. They're called Bites, and the bigger they get, the sillier the names become. Bite, Megabyte, and the boss battle, Gigabyte, all block your path out of the tunnels. Very cool finally seeing the subway of this iconic city, but also not that eventful. Now the third chapter is anything but boring. Eventful is the name of the game when it comes to desperate times. This is where we finally get our PS2 RPD recreation. If you're a fan of RE2 and specifically the investigative elements of that title's story, reading files, examining the rooms, and piecing together the RPD's fall through environmental storytelling, well then Desperate Times is one hell of a treat for you. This scenario shows us how this iconic haven fell. We get to connect the faces to the names mentioned in RE2's files. A familiar lieutenant, Marvin, gives us our orders, while a new officer, Rita, carries out her escape plan. At its core, this chapter is fan service perfected. You don't get to explore every room from RE2, but you get a healthy amount of the main building and underground. You aren't just doing or seeing RE2 again, you're seeing what the RPD was like before it fell into ruin. The main hall has a theme that sort of sounds like RE2's, but it's not. It's a little more upbeat. It's a little more hopeful. In RE2, you find one of the station's keys by inserting a medallion into the base of the main hall statue. Here we actually remove that medallion, leaving it for whoever else finds it to place on Chris's desk in the following days. Instead, we use colored key plates to open the statue's secret passage. RE2 Remake fans, this is where they got that from. On the surface, Desperate Times seems like it's shaping up to be an all-around banger survival horror experience. Sadly, an issue not totally exclusive to this level, but more a problem with File 2 as a whole, is how this and most of the scenarios feature a horrible difficulty gimmick for little to no reason. Wild Things has a giant pursuer entity, which could get annoying for a lot of reasons. The second scenario, Flashback, has its own unkillable idiot pursuer that we'll talk about in a sec. And Desperate Times has poisonous gas that fills each of the rooms randomly. I'm sorry, where was this gas in RE2? Oh, Chief Irons installed special sprinklers at some point. The gas doesn't hurt the monsters in the station, it's specifically anti-human. Imagine making, or in this case, adapting something that everyone loves and doing it perfectly, and then just ruining all of that. For the sake of a shitty gimmick to keep people on their toes? This gas, by the way, increases your virus gauge rapidly, like unfairly so. You can clear the air with single, very limited use purifiers, but running out of those while casually exploring ruins the pace of the level. You'll be calmly walking around and then all of a sudden hear,
Caution. Warning. Caution. Warning.
Like, what sense does it make having poisonous gas fill the RPD at all? What lore reason is there for this to happen? Oh, there really isn't one. Is it to make players not idle in the level for too long, wasting precious server time and money? Well, the virus gauge exists for that specific reason, right? Why does this happen at all in single player? We already have enough things to worry about. It's just a shit decision. Desperate Times was my favorite scenario for about 10 minutes back in 2004. It is currently and will always probably be my least favorite scenario because of this one nonsensical design choice. I've asked people over the years why they think this is a thing, and no one else gets it either. The Resident Evil series does a lot of things right, but every once in a while the games will present you with some of the worst ideas in gaming history. And yes, remaking the RPD in PS2 vision only to make you desperately run through it and not absorb any of its updated atmosphere is a massive problem. All of that being said, the scenario still ends incredibly strongly, like most scenarios. After completing the main hall statue puzzle, Marvin gets bitten by a zombie outside of the station. RE3 Remake fans, that's where they got that. Rita shows up with a police van and the group make an epic final stand at the gates of the RPD. As a kid playing RE2, I always imagined what it would be like to see the zombies at the start actually break through these gates. Getting to see that dream come true was awesome. See, that's the thing about Outbreak. As an RE fan, it answers so many of your questions about Raccoon City, while also giving you so many things you'd only dream about or didn't know you ever wanted. In spite of its flaws, it really is a magical game. If Below Freezing Point is my favorite Outbreak experience, then in terms of storytelling, the narrative-heavy Flashback is my second favorite. Starring the one and only Alyssa Ashcroft, Flashback sees the group investigating a decrepit hospital in the Arklay Forest. We start mysteriously in a solitary cabin, led to believe that the group made it out of the city but was overwhelmed by monsters lurking in these woods.
I don't get many visitors around here. I hear the city's in quite a state right about now.
A very suspicious older man walks in like he owns this place, letting us know about a trail that leads to the neighboring town.
Let me show you the way. Let's hope no one gets hurt. It's not like there's a decent hospital around here after all.
As the man takes the lead, we see a few framed photos of a younger couple, perhaps the old man and his wife. If you choose to follow after him, you'll have to keep up with his surprisingly agile body. The old man seemingly leads us to the hospital he was joking about. As Alyssa approaches the hospital, she re-experiences a few faded memories. Flashbacks of a doctor urging her to stay away, police officers roping off the building. Heading inside, we're immediately greeted by the Axeman, a purely unkillable, nimble powerhouse that makes exploring this condemned place as unpleasant as it looks. I really hope that sweet old man is okay. The Axeman is quick and can stunlock you into a combo that can kill. I've had playthroughs where simply failing to get past his first attack got me killed, meaning I got to play the level for a staggering 5 whole minutes. This is another example of a totally unfair gimmick, kind of ruining a fantastic level. Luckily for me, the mystery surrounding Alyssa's investigation was enough for me to push through. Taking a closer look around, you'll notice the building itself is basically standing due to living, tentacle-like vines embedded in the floor and walls. This overgrowth spreading all throughout the hospital can be seen pretty much everywhere. As you explore, you'll find a variety of deadly plant life. Living whips whap you as you pass by, and giant flowers fire off poisonous clouds of pollen. If we try leaving out of the back door, vines spring to life, trapping us inside. Whatever this all-consuming monster is, currently puppeting the building around, clearly doesn't want us to leave. Finding old records, diaries, and memos, we piece together what happened to this place. Chief medical practitioner Al Lester worked at this hospital as head of staff. His wife, Dorothy, was diagnosed with a debilitating heart condition, prompting Al to stay by her side as often as he could. The two practically living in the hospital as Dorothy's condition worsened. As time went on, the hospital was approached by Umbrella and chosen to take part in a clinical trial for one of their miracle drugs in development. This experimental virus, provided by none other than Greg Mueller, the guy from Desicions Desicsions, helps cure a patient's cancer outright. Al, taking note of the potential this cure had, successfully infected his wife. At first, the drug produced phenomenal results, curing Dorothy the following day. Sadly, soon after, Dorothy would begin showing symptoms of zombification. Umbrella's terrible influence would consume the hospital overnight, as more and more BOW trials and creations would begin in this very building. All of this tragically taking place in 1993. This was also the year where Alyssa Ashcroft and her colleague Kurt would investigate Umbrella's interference in this lonely forest-bound hospital. During this visit, Kurt would question Al's intentions, what he was up to taking money from this shady enterprise. The reporters would soon find out, with Al's zombified wife taking Kurt's life. Alyssa, being a younger reporter, would take off, never looking back. So traumatized by what she saw, she repressed these terrible memories, forgetting them completely. Well, until now. Getting back to our present day, in a chemical storage room, we find an old machine leaking some kind of acidic solvent. Surrounding the liquid lay dead vines. Injecting this chemical into key plants fused to certain parts of the building kills them. Suspiciously, these key plant areas are where you're likely to run into our mysterious Axeman. Knocking off one plant after another forces open a massive vegetative cocoon in the basement. Destroying this hive mind enrages the Axeman. If you manage to do enough damage in time, the man rips his mask off, revealing that he is none other than the old man from the start. He is Al Lester. The now dead cocoon spits out the corpse of Lester's wife, seemingly devoured by this experiment all those years ago. As the building crumbles, we make it out, but Al stays by Dorothy's side, just as he always did, accepting his fate, finally laying them both to rest. Out of all of Outbreak's investigations, if you will, Flashback is my favorite. Figuring out this multi-layered puzzle spanning the different chapters of both Outbreak parts is rewarding to say the least. Having an emotional connection shrouded in mystery as deep as Al and Dorothy's tragedy makes this story stand out further than the rest. Knowing about Umbrella's scumbag tactics in furthering their research is something we're used to by now, but it's individual stories like this one that really make you want to burn that megacorporation to the ground. For as annoying as his relentless assault can be, Al going the extra mile and protecting what little remains of his poor dead wife makes a lot of sense. The mask he wears being a shroud to hide his shame. Working with Umbrella is as bad as making a deal with the devil. In their tragedy, a hopeful redemption was earned that day. Alyssa Ashcroft, once a cowardly and very green reporter, actually stood her ground and faced this horror to its conclusion, closing this case once and for all. Before we move on to the exciting conclusion of Outbreak, Flashback actually has a hidden alternate path that I have to talk about. As a multiplayer game, everyone is free to do whatever they want, right? Cooperate, sabotage the team, or just go your own way. During the hospital investigation, the bridge you cross to get to the building always collapses at a certain point. No matter what you do, you're locked into this choice. If you're one of those rascals that broke away from the group and stayed on the other side of that bridge, you're actually locked out of getting to the hospital. Instead of hitting a game over, the devs thought about this and added a secret outcome to this story, which in its own right is pretty meaningful. Making your way back to the cabin at the start, a new character appears, an injured woman named Reagan. Reagan escaped the outbreak in the city just like our survivors here, but loses her daughter, Lucy, somewhere in the forest. The wounded mother asks if we can go look for her little girl, and we do, being the heroic loners that we are. Heading through the woods this time is a lot harder, with the all-new scissor tail monsters stalking each and every path of the forest. If you can find your way through this maze of hell, you'll find Lucy hiding near a riverbed. Reuniting the girl with her mother, you can ad-lib to Reagan, where she tells you about an alternate route out of this accursed woods. It's another giant bridge and the path they took to get here, so that means going back in the direction of the chaos. This bridge is crawling with monsters, a just reward for abandoning your friends to an unkillable Axeman. It's a much less exciting conclusion to unraveling the entire mystery of the abandoned hospital, but hey, at least you helped a mother and daughter live to see another day. I'm sure this statement will age like milk, but I'm hoping that anything from Alyssa Ashcroft's Flashback adventure, be it the main or alternate path, is reflected in the upcoming Resident Evil Requiem. I hope at some point Alyssa remembers helping Lucy and Reagan out of their desperate situation when taking care of her own daughter. The final chapter of Outbreak, appropriately titled End of the Road, begins in one of Umbrella's many city-side R&D facilities. In a surprise twist of fate, Umbrella employee Linda, a keeper of many of the company's secrets, decides to go public with Umbrella's schemes, exposing their latest horrifying creations and stealing a test subject simply called Nyx. Together, her and a few USS officers get a helicopter ready for transport out of the city. End of the Road is fairly straightforward in its design, once again feeling like an all-encompassing send-off, just like the first Outbreak's finale. The facility we're trapped in is filled with hunters. To combat this persistent refresh of reptilian rampage, one of the employees decides to activate one of the mass-produced tyrants, which means we get a tyrant as a bodyguard. Getting to calmly walk side by one of RE's most intimidating monsters as it protects you is both chilling and empowering. I think what really blows my mind about Outbreak was at this point, Resident Evil was a full video game franchise. We had RE 1 through 3, Code Veronica, Survivor, Dead Aim, Gaiden, Remake, RE 0, and the game that would change the entire industry, RE 4, was right around the corner. If you played all of these games and read all of the files, if you were really tuned into Resident Evil, you knew what tyrants were, and you knew what they were capable of. These are mass-produced, nearly invincible, controllable monsters that also double as discreet bodyguards for the highest rung of the corporate ladder. We've seen the places these things are made, we've fought multiple earth-shattering, larger-than-life monster versions of them, but to be the one a tyrant gets to protect in an undeniably dangerous situation is electric. It's nerve-wracking. Everyone who experienced this moment back in 2004 knew that it was only a matter of time before this thing actually woke up. In a game filled with lovingly crafted and implemented lore callbacks and creative twists on what we know from this franchise, this moment is one of the first that comes to mind when I think about Outbreak. This right here is the type of thing that makes Outbreak as special as it is. Anyway, the tyrant wakes up, knocking Linda into a gross drainage channel. Working our way down, somehow the water comes rushing in. Swept up in the current, the group finds themselves in the same sewer system that we run through in Outbreak's very first chapter. Climbing the ladder, we're treated to some more incredible RE voice acting.
This'll be the 99th rodent I kill. Wait a sec. I think that may be a live one. Well, fuck it.
And that, my friends, is the very first verbal F-bomb dropped in the Resident Evil franchise. Heading inside of the Apple Inn, we find Linda and help her get to her escape chopper. Not after precisely dodging a bunch of landmines.
The one down at the end here is not... Oh, there is... Okay.
What you do from here is up to you. If you're fast enough, you can make it to the escape chopper, but a super tyrant stands in your way. If you miss your flight, you can climb to the top of one of the nearby buildings, where we see a massive sign for Zapata Beer. RE3 Remake fans, that's where it comes from. On the rooftops, we jump to the neighboring freeway where Linda's stolen test subject, the Nyx, has broken free.
What the?
The monster, having absorbed civilians, soldiers, and a full-on tyrant, swings wildly at the group. Don't get too close, or you'll be assimilated into the Borg. This is a side note, but the Nyx always really disturbed me. Not in like a Resident Evil way, but in more of a cosmic horror kind of way. It's one of those creatures where you imagine what would happen if this thing was able to escape the city. This is a world-ending threat. What makes it even more inspiring is how a group of nobodies are the ones that end this world-ending threat. Nothing a few rockets can't fix. Escaping with Linda nets us our character's epilogue ending. These epilogues are some of the better conclusions we get out of this series. They show us what each character does after the events of the game. For some, like Mark, he settles down with his family, as they all have a wonderful barbecue together. Kevin and Jim, being friends, start new lives entirely. They're on the phone with each other talking about their new jobs, and it's very cute. Alyssa, pumping iron, can't stop thinking about Raccoon City. She'll never be dissuaded by any horrors ever again. Her focus is iron. Her determination, true. Most importantly, Yoko and Linda testify against Umbrella in the famous Raccoon City trials. This is the event that actually sends Umbrella as a company into bankruptcy. It's actually what Leon talks about at the start of RE4. I am so proud of these ex-Umbrella babes, just laying down the corporation's secrets bare for all to see. And this is something Resident Evil used to do a lot back in the day. You'd finish the game and you'd get a bite-sized look into what the characters were up to after their horror adventure. What I loved about these was that it showed us that however horrifying the trip these people went on was, life still continues. Sometimes you'd get Jill excitedly meeting up with someone, and other times you'd see Ada thinking deeply about her tortured past. Outbreak gives us this kind of thing, but to the ultimate degree. Again, it might even be more inspiring given how normal each of the survivors is. Aside from Kevin and Mark, the Outbreak crew are all normies with little to no combat experience. Seeing them succeed and go on to live happily, or to even take down said corporation responsible for all of this, is absolutely legendary. Give me more true happy endings in my scary games, please. And a word for Capcom, because I know you're listening, please bring back fun results screens. The newer games having very clean, almost nothing results screens kinda suck. Give me a shot of Ashley shopping at Hot Topic. How about Chris playing bodyguard for Mia and Rose? What about seeing 3R Jill at the club? Come on, Capcom. Hashtag bring back capital RE Zolt screens, please. As you've seen with some of the alternate paths, Outbreak has a lot of replayability per scenario, but what sends it into overdrive is its unlockables. Outbreak has a deep shop and points system with its collection. From here, you can spend points gained from finishing levels. Stuff like concept art, music, character and environment sound files, funnily enough, extra modes, and of course, costumes are all here to earn for hardcore survivors. To unlock specific character costumes, you actually have to thoroughly search each level for special items. These SP items are usually different articles of clothing, and completing a set unlocks the outfit for purchase. The SP items are cute, with their descriptions being the inner thoughts of the characters they pertain to. What's fun is each outfit actually fits each character's interests and personality. So Alyssa, for example, can wear gym gear, a runner's outfit, and a karate gi. All of these fits imply that she loves physical activity and flexing her muscles as much as her mind. Kevin has a casual modern-day cowboy look, and an 80s high school greaser fit, which would suggest that this is what he truly thinks is the coolest things to wear. I think these outfits are extremely cool and way more appropriate than getting some immersion-breaking fantasy costumes like in some of the other Resident Evil games. Alyssa also gets a tiny red dress that I can only imagine has to be a reference to Alice from the first Resident Evil movie. I have it on very good authority that Capcom's developers have always enjoyed the Anderson RE films. They pretty much go out of their way to reference them from time to time. This seems to be the biggest reference of them all. Alyssa, Alice, Alyssa. Costumes aren't the only character-specific extras you can unlock. Outbreak does something that few games from this era accomplished, and that's letting you unlock and play as almost every NPC you come across throughout the game. You can play as each individual RPD officer, Reagan, the Axeman, and Mother Flippin' Special Agent Hunk. These bonus characters use the ability sets of each of the main cast, but have their own special quirks. Some bonus characters can run extra fast, some tank more damage, in File 2 everyone starts with a unique item, and some even start with different health conditions. It makes playing online even more fun because you might end up seeing players use characters you've never seen before. Like, who's this backwards hat guy dragging me away from zombies? It adds to that everyday hero motif that Outbreak's constantly giving. For the extra gameplay modes, we've got Lone Wolf, which is self-explanatory, Elimination, which is like a time attack enemy gauntlet using randomized environments, and Showdown is this title's boss rush. All of these unlockables will have you play in this game for years. Well, if you've got the friends to play it with. So how do you play Outbreak online in the modern day? Well, sadly, since this is a PS2 online game, its service has long been discontinued. Like I mentioned at the start, the online functionality for the first game wasn't even available in the UK, but File 2, strangely enough, got it eventually. From what I remember, Outbreak was fairly popular for a time, so getting into games was easy. With unlockables in mind, completing an online match also got you way more collection points. So while single player was always a fallback, Capcom really wanted you to play the game with your friends. It's just a shame we can no longer do that anymore. Until now, thanks to the completely free and fan-operated Observer Forum, aka the Outbreak Server Resurrection. Believe it or not, but Outbreak has been fully playable online since the year 2014, long after its 2007 shutdown. There are a few ways to play Outbreak online right now, those being owning a Japanese PS2 version with all of the original online capabilities intact, you can use a hacked PS3 FAT, or you can be a normal person and use emulation. So emulation is kind of scary to talk about in video form like this. Documenting the how and where in terms of obtaining games and the programs to run them is big trouble. But rest assured, there is an extremely convenient tutorial video out there that you yourself may choose to watch that will explain everything and give you all you need to know on how to play Outbreak online right now. Once you set all of that up, just make an account on the server forum and that's it. I gotta tell ya, playing a classic fixed camera survival horror focused Resident Evil with 3 other people, all voice chatting on Discord, is an experience unlike any other. When Outbreak released, it was plagued with a lot of inconvenient roadblocks, the biggest being the absence of an in-game voice chat. Having the ability to live communicate is such a game changer for this title. Playing online is playing Outbreak properly. If you're a fan of the series and missed playing online back in the day, I highly recommend jumping through the hoops and getting this game working. For many survival horror fans, playing Outbreak online in the modern day is a life-changing experience. Getting to run through each scenario with a friend or entire group for this video made me realize how much time has been wasted on other RE-related online games after Outbreak's shutdown. Aside from RE5 and parts of Operation Raccoon City, nothing has come close to Outbreak's sublime co-op nature. For many years, many fans, myself included, have voiced their praise for Outbreak being the golden standard for Resident Evil multiplayer. We've also voiced our complaints and have wondered why Capcom hasn't done anything to bring it back, whether that be a sequel, remake, or just a port of the original game. Capcom hasn't touched the idea of Outbreak since it was cancelled. With that said, as we've noted multiple times throughout this documentary, fans aren't the only ones who like Outbreak. Capcom themselves seem to straight up love this game. Judging by the plethora of references to this title that show up in every modern RE game. Remember the collectible Mr. Raccoon statues that you could shoot in RE2 Remake? He also comes from Outbreak. He's the zoo's mascot. That's one more for the books. The closest we got to another crack at Outbreak was Resident Evil Resistance. This multiplayer-only title was released alongside RE3R back in 2020 at the height of you-know-what. With everyone being stuck inside, I actually played a lot of this game with my Resident Evil-loving friend group, and yeah, we didn't hate it. This title is an asymmetric multiplayer game. I'm sorry, but I have very limited knowledge with online games, so forgive me if I say anything that sounds out of the ordinary. It's not exactly like Dead by Daylight, but one player does control the match's mastermind, which happens to be a series villain. You've got evildoers like Annette Birkin, Nikolai, and Spencer to choose from. Each control the environment the rival survivor team has to navigate through. A mastermind's ultimate panic button is the ability to summon and play as one of the iconic monsters from the franchise. So Birkin obviously summons her husband, while Supervisor Nikolai has Nemesis under control. Despite all of that being very cool, I have literally never played the mastermind role. When I play RE, I want to have that very humanistic survival experience. Resistance was pretty fun and sort of channeled a bit of Outbreak's vibe, albeit in a much more lighthearted and intentionally campy way. What helped keep my interest was this title's very own Outbreak references, two of which happen to be Alyssa's understudy, January Van Sant, a badass 90s hacker, and Valerie Harmon, the roommate to the one and only Yoko Suzuki. Valerie also has a backpack, making her superpower the ability to hold more things. Each character has a lot more going on than just basic gameplay uniqueness, but this isn't a Resistance documentary, so perhaps we'll go deeper into this game another time. This game had admittedly similar cooperative, light puzzle-solving, combat-orientated gameplay that did echo the days of Outbreak. Unfortunately, the title fell short due to a lot of modern design trends like purchasable loot boxes and EX bonuses that would gate off certain unlocks, like the plethora of costumes each character could sport. Imagine playing a modern RE title that has like 10 unlockable costumes for your favorite character, but you have to roll the dice for an inkling of a chance to unlock them. Sorry, you got a skin for a weapon you'll never use. Better luck next time. A very common sentiment I've been seeing is people wanting a remake of Outbreak. While I do think the concept would work wonders if faithfully executed, a part of the magic of this game was playing it over and over like a classic RE title, gaining those collection points with your friends, and unlocking tons more things that extended that playtime naturally. Not playing for hours and hours like it's a job, doing your dailies just to unlock spendable points that might get you something you actually want. If Outbreak was remade today, you know that all of the character costumes would be paywalled in one way or another. There'd be microtransaction collection point boosters. Let's be real, there'd probably be an unlock everything DLC that would cost $20. And the focus on slower-paced survival horror exploration and cooperative puzzle solving would be reduced. Listen, the pipe dream of getting to see Alyssa, Yoko, and Kevin trekking through RE2R tier scenario remakes is a fun dream to have, but you know something about that would be lost in translation. How would making Outbreak look and play like every other game available right now set it apart from those games? Does repositioning an artfully thought-out fixed camera angle really improve anything? To me, modernizing a game shouldn't be sticking to a proven script. Modernizing Outbreak would be making sure the control system is as tight as it can be. It would mean having access to your inventory on the spot. Or get this, modernizing Outbreak would unify its scenarios. No longer would these iconic levels be separated into zones, but coalesce together. Every scenario would be a seamless map. To rewrite Outbreak's core DNA as an over-the-shoulder shooter is to remove a big part of Outbreak's identity. Outbreak is not a modern over-the-shoulder game, it's the end of the classic era of Resident Evil, so it should stay that way. I think if we ever got another true Outbreak title, I think it should be a proper sequel, one where the expectation of the original game's classic RE formula isn't on the table to be messed with. Say for instance, if Capcom made an actual Resident Evil Outbreak 2, then there'd be more merit in making that game over the shoulder. If I had my way, I would just port Outbreak and File 2 as one package with mechanical improvements, much like the recent Onimusha 1 and 2 remastered ports. Those games are still their original visions, but modernized. They've still got fixed camera angles and a tank control option, but modern day additions that are there to smooth over a potentially rough experience for newer players. There are undeniably amazing modern remakes out there, plenty that I have thoroughly enjoyed, but I also enjoy game preservation. Having the ability to purchase all of the original Resident Evil titles ported to current-gen consoles, either on digital storefronts or even in real-life shops, is my ultimate wish for the Resident Evil franchise going forward. Listen, when Resident Evil 9 was announced, and to everyone's shock, showed an RE engine Alyssa Ashcroft, the Observer Forum actually blew up. Traction to the site saw its highest peak of players. Over 5,000 people signed up to play. This, alongside the bittersweet epitaph for Alyssa's mysterious death, of course. Thousands of new potential RE fans went the extra mile to set this game up, likely to learn all about Alyssa Ashcroft and her previous Outbreak adventures. The fact that those fans did this should be a testament to what an official Outbreak re-release would look like. Let's be honest, if Capcom simply ported Outbreak with functional online, it would have way more players than that. With RE9 being a sort of sequel to Outbreak, I think now would probably be the best time to bring the original Outbreak back in any way. Alyssa and her daughter seem to be key players in Requiem's story, so their past should be explorable by those who are interested, right? Outbreak is an incredible game, but it is undeniable that it was too ahead of its time. Unfortunately, all of its single-player issues are only remedied when playing online. Many RE multiplayer attempts have been made, but none have come close to the purity of Outbreak's gameplay and true survival horror experience. Outbreak was too ahead of its time, but the funny thing about that is we've actually reached its perfect timing. We currently live in a world where Outbreak is where it always should have been. Capcom should officially identify that and take advantage of that specific fan interest and revive the potential that Outbreak always had. Let's hope the stars align and the Outbreak 8 can live on once again. Until then, I'll keep playing. Excuse me. Hello? Who's this?
I've been waiting for you, friends. I'm fully aware of what I'm doing. Can't you see? Man committed
I'll be right on it, sir. You stay wherever you are.
Nature, the life cycle.
Looks like I have to go prevent the confusion in the city. I'll see you next time, Outbreakers.